Hello everyone, Andrew Cherico here for the Sons of UCF, and welcome to my 2024 through 2025 UCF men's basketball team Big 12 play record prediction. First, let's do a very quick analysis of what has happened throughout non-conference play for the Knights now that we're midway through the season. This is a UCF team that has gone 9-2 throughout non-conference play, while averaging a score of 80 points per game due to the helpful additions of guard Jordan Ivy Curry and forward Keyshawn Hall. This is not something you typically see in a Johnny Dawkins coached team, especially without the help of guards Jalen Sellers and Mikey Williams, who missed the majority of non-conference play, coming back for the last game against Jacksonville. Now, it hasn't been all perfect for this UCF men's basketball team, as there have been three big question marks throughout the season so far. The first one being, surprisingly, the defense. Now, this isn't something you typically hear out of Johnny Dawkins coached basketball teams, but for example, the Knights team blew a double-digit lead to LSU to eventually lose in overtime. Now, this is either a transitional period where they're still learning the Johnny Dawkins philosophy, or this can simply be a trade-off where it's more offense for less defense. Now, for the second question mark of the team, it's the rebounding. Behind true freshman center Mustafa Chiam, there isn't a center that's getting solid minutes on the court behind him, other than Rokas, and Rokas isn't seeing that much minutes. It's been more of a combo position between forwards J.J. Taylor and Benny Williams. But the team, while scoring more, has been out-rebounded in 5 of their 11 non-conference games. Now, for the third and final question mark, it's one that we all know. It's the shooting starts for this Knights team. There is times where this team has been in conference play, and this is a trend that's followed from previous years. Well, it's simple. If they want to compete in these Big 12 tough matchups, they're going to need to get to the spots, knock them down, and early. Now I'll be moving on to my top 2 X-Factor players for the Knights team this year. The first one being true freshman center Mustafa Chiam, who, like I mentioned before, is the only center on the team that's receiving consistent minutes at the 5 position. He's already heard NBA talks at his early age, which is super impressive, while averaging 7 points per game and almost 3 blocks per game. And that's just based off of potential. He's proven that he can score in the low post, the mid-range, and even extend it to the three-point line throughout the season. But one of the main issues he has had has been staying physical without getting in foul trouble. He's often found himself in foul trouble, hurting the Knights early on in the season. But in order for the Knights to compete in the Big 12, he needs to stay on the court. So he needs to keep building his strength while staying out of foul trouble in a punishing Big 12 conference. Now I'll be moving on to my second X-Factor player for the Knights this year, and it's somebody that we all know and arguably a top-tier Big 12 player when healthy. His name is Jalen Sellers. Unfortunately, Jalen suffered a very scary injury prior to the beginning of non-conference play and missed all of non-conference play but the last game, where he found himself into the lineup on a minute restriction. With Jalen Sellers healthy and in the lineup, he is easily a 15 points per game scorer who brings defense and rebounding, but most importantly, true veteran leadership. It's kind of simple with Jalen. If he is on this team and healthy during conference play, they're winning another 2 to 3 games with him. Now, it's the time we've all been waiting for. My UCF men's basketball Big 12 record prediction. Now, before we begin the prediction, I do want to note that every ranking list aligned with the Knights' schedule is accurate as of December 27th, 2024. So this is prior to the Knights beginning conference play against Texas Tech. But on that note, starting with Texas Tech, I do think the Knights are going to go on the road and take a loss. I think it'll be a hostile environment. I do think it'll be a tough match, and I think we'll see some rust in that game. But they say lightning doesn't strike twice. We're hoping that happens with new UCF football head coach Scott Frost, and I do think that'll happen against number 7 ranked Kansas at home for the Knights' home opener. We saw it happen last year against Kansas at home. It was the crowd flooding the court, fantastic environment. I do think with all Fear the Franz and all the fan experience and all the fan environment, we know that every team plays Kansas like that, but it's special here at UCF. Next, I have the Knights getting 2 wins in a row, going against Colorado at home, bringing the Knights to 2-1. Then I see the Knights going on the road versus Arizona and winning that one to bring them to 3 wins in a row, making the Knights 3-1 to begin the first 4 games of the season. Then I see the Knights going to a strong Arizona State team and losing on the road, bringing them to 3-2. I do think Arizona State is a very good basketball program, and that'll be a very tough matchup for the Knights. And then a team that the Knights have struggled with historically, very much so in basketball, against number 15 ranked Houston at home. I do see the Knights taking it out. It was either the Knights beating Kansas or beating Houston at home. I do think since it's the first game of the season that the Knights will have that extra boost to beat Kansas at home, but I cannot see the same for Houston. And then losing to number three ranked Iowa State on the road, bringing the Knights to 3-4 in the season. So now we move on to TCU, where the Knights win at home to bring them to 4-4. I do think TCU is a great bounce-back game for the Knights. If you look at the schedule, they have a tough 3 games where they go against Arizona State, Houston, and Iowa State. So TCU is absolutely the bounce-back game on the schedule. But then I don't see Knights beating Kansas twice in that year, in this season, especially on the road, where the Knights will lose to number 7 Kansas to bring the record of 4-5. Now, realistically speaking, they're not going to beat Kansas twice, especially on the road. Now, going on to BYU, the Knights will lose back-to-back games. This one is at home versus BYU. Looking at the schedule, there was a few matchups where the Knights can easily win this at home, but that never happens. You see a lot of these upset matchups, and I do think that UCF will be the favorite going into this game versus BYU, but they'll lose it at home to bring the record to 4-6. But then I see the Knights bouncing back with back-to-back wins, beating number 17th ranked rival Cincinnati, bringing the record of 5-6, and beating number 25 Baylor on the road, bringing the Knights to 6-6. With UCF men's basketball, you really never know at the end of the day. There's been a lot of unpredictableness, if that's even a word, on this schedule already, and I only see it getting more unpredictable for the Knights throughout the season. This ranking, this prediction might not be anywhere close to where it's been, but it's for the most part, I think it'll be pretty accurate. And then after the Knights go back to 500 at 6-6 after beating Baylor on the road, I see them losing at home again to number 3 ranked Iowa State. Iowa State is projected to be one of the best teams in college basketball, and the Knights aren't up to that level yet. I do think the Knights can have a tough matchup with them at home. I just see it being another one of those heartbreakers where the Knights were this close to winning it. And then I see the Knights losing another matchup, this one on the road at Colorado, bringing the Knights to 6-8, where this brings the Knights to 2-6 on the road. But then they continue the road trip and beat Oklahoma State on the road, bringing their record to 7-8 in conference play and 3-6 on the road. Then I see the Knights going on a 2-game win streak, beating Utah at home and Kansas State at home. Looking at the schedule, these are 2 of the more winnable games because you have teams going against Iowa State, Cincinnati, Baylor. And while I have them winning some of those games, Utah and Kansas needs to be circled on their calendar as definite win games if they want to make the March Madness tournament. And then you got TCU. I have that as an L on the road. I do think that this Knights team is going to be back and forth with wins and losses all season. And then I have Oklahoma State at home for the last home game of the season, them beating Oklahoma State, bringing their conference record to 10-9, 7-3 overall at home. And then for the last game of the season, I have the Knights securing the W to go 11-9 in conference play and 4-6 on the road. I do think that this Knights team will be good enough to make the big tournament. But comparing the records of last year, I do think the Knights will go 20-11 this year as opposed to 17-16 last year. And in terms of conference play, I think the Knights team will be 4 games better, going 11-9 rather than 7-11. The road record will be 1 game improved from 4-6 to 3-6, and the home record will be 7-3 to 4-5 to last year. So I do see improvements all around this year's team with the Knights. They have a stronger offense. While the defensive and rebounding might not be there, a lot of the reasons why the Knights lost last year was because their offense couldn't put up more than 65 points in some of these close games. They have an offense that can do that now, and if their defense comes back to anywhere near close to natural form, this Knights team can be seeing a lot more wins. So, what did you think about my midway analysis and Big 12 record prediction for this Knights team this year? And what do you expect from this Knights team this year? Can they make the big tournament? Let me know. And until next time, I'm Andrew Cherico for the Sons of UCF.